Every year, over £40 billion is stolen from the UK's public purse. But up and down Britain, there's an army of fraud fighters battling to win it back.
We managed to recover over £108,000.
We intercepted a potential fraud of £20 million.
You just can't go about stealing money and hope to get away with it.
From paying for the police and our health service, filling in potholes and emptying our dustbins, to making sure everyone has a roof over their head.
We all pay our taxes for that. To go into the hands of a criminal is a really despicable thing.
These local services we all depend on are under more pressure than ever.
The council had no money left.
I just felt sick to my stomach.
The investigators' mission has never been more vital.
We're like dogs with bones. We won't let it go.
We will find you, we will prosecute you, and we will take your assets off you.
The fraud squad are on the case.
Today, a personal betrayal at the heart of a council as a trusted colleague steals over £200,000 to pay for luxury holidays and a very expensive hobby.
It was just horrendous knowing that somebody had sat opposite you, lying to you, misleading you and manipulating you for their benefit.
And a woman who claims she can barely move to pocket £500,000 in benefits is caught out in spectacular style.
Out of that chair quickly and smoothly, and now she's dancing with her partner. This is not someone who's severely disabled.
Council insider siphoning off a massive £220,000 of public money for their own gain is a shocking betrayal of the community they're meant to serve. But when that person has been a colleague or even a friend, the betrayal is not only public, it's intensely personal.
It is unbelievable. This is just using the public money as a private bank account without any care, without any consideration and without any thought.
This money-hungry clerk splashed the stolen cash on extravagant holidays, expensive equipment for her horses, and showered herself and her family with luxuries worth tens of thousands of pounds. Rugeley in Staffordshire is a small market town. It has a population of nearly 25,000 people and a town council that oversees public services that are important to its residents.
We deal with the very small things that matter to local communities. Play areas, it could be allotments, it could be public events. Hello, Rugeley Town Council, can I help you?
Hilary Goodread joined the town council as the town clerk in 2017.
Starting a new job here was exciting. I was brought in to do a specific job of sorting out the governance and the accountability for the council, and it was exciting times. I relished the challenge, and everybody seemed really friendly.
Working directly below Hilary is her new colleague, Rebecca Mason, who has worked as the assistant town clerk for several years.
Rebecca had been an employee here since 2008. She'd been the constant over quite a few years and was trusted, completely and utterly trusted.
Rebecca holds a position of responsibility, and one of her main duties is to administer the town council's finances.
She was very knowledgeable about her job. You had confidence in her. She was there to advise, she was there to report back to the finance committee. She had those responsibilities to the council, to the councillors, and most importantly, to the members of public.
Hilary and Rebecca quickly form a close friendship.
When I started, Rebecca made me feel incredibly welcome because I was only coming in for a few hours each week. The councillors had agreed that I could bring my dog in with me, and Becky was absolutely loved having my dog in the office, always very kind and good to him. She was just very nice, very human, very personable.
And as their friendship blossoms, Hilary learns that Rebecca has an all-consuming and costly private passion.
She certainly had 2 horses, possibly 3 or 4. She'd stabled them and they were in full livery. So she would go and see them first thing in the morning, and then she'd come to work, and then she'd go back in the evenings and take her daughter riding. At weekends, her whole social life revolved around the horsey world in Staffordshire, really.
As the months go by, Hilary gets to know her colleagues' routine, and something that catches her eye are the numerous packages that appear to be delivered every day for Rebecca.
Packages would arrive, and she would quite happily say, oh, this is another horse blanket for this one horse. Or there'd be clothes that would arrive, and she'd say, yeah, this is for my daughter for riding. And every day there'd be boxes. So I did, on one day, ask her and say, what is it with all of this? You know, how on earth can you afford all the horses? I mean, I knew what she got paid, so I was just a bit bemused that the spending of her didn't really match what I knew would be the income into the family.
Hilary's gut is telling her that something isn't right. But Rebecca has a bulletproof explanation.
Her response was that her father had left, and he was a barrister in Barcelona in Spain, and he had guilt issues. So he would be paying for the horses and for everything that supplied the horses.
Hilary gives her colleague the benefit of the doubt.
I didn't know Rebecca that well and took it at face value that that must indeed be what was happening.
But horses aren't the only thing Mason splurges on. Despite her modest salary, the assistant town clerk appears to fancy herself part of the jet set.
Her favourite place to go would be Turkey, so she would go off and take her mother and her daughter. Nothing unusual in that, though in 2018 she went on holiday and she was booked into a hotel and then announced partway through the holiday she didn't like the hotel that they were staying in, so they were going to move to a better hotel further down the road. Which I thought, well, that would have cost quite a bit of money because she'd already got the one hotel booked.
Hilary can't put her finger on it, but something smells fishy.
How she afforded it did cross my mind. The number of parcels never stopped. But so I thought, OK, well, if the dad's paying for all the horses, then that leaves all of Rebecca's salary to pay for everything else.
Later, Hilary turns sleuth and uncovers evidence that confirms her worst fears.
It was clear that there were serious discrepancies in the payments taken out of our bank account.
When we fall on hard times, the public purse is there as a safety net, to give us a roof over our head, to help pay our bills, to fund carers to look after us when we need it most. But some see this crucial pot as a money-making opportunity. For them, it's not about need. It's all about greed.
She just wanted to grab as much money as she can.
Prosecutor Ben Reed, who works for the Crown Prosecution Service, was part of a core team who brought the culprit behind this complex and high-value fraud case to justice.
The Maribel Milligan case first came to light in January 2013 when an anonymous call was made to the benefit fraud hotline. The whistleblower was saying that Maribel Milligan had property, had income, had capital, and was not as disabled as she was claiming. It's a very common thing for people to call the benefit fraud hotline. It's a very important way in which benefit frauds are discovered.
53-year-old Maribel Milligan is accused of thieving from the public purse. To get to the bottom of the allegations, the fraud squad leap into action.
When the investigation team looked at Maribel Milligan's claims, they could see that she was claiming 7 different benefits. 4 of those were based on her disability, so that's disability living allowance, severe disablement allowance, an independent living fund, and direct payments. 3 of the other benefits were based on her financial circumstances, so that was income support, housing benefit, and council tax benefit.
The paperwork paints a picture of a woman battling severe physical and financial hardship.
The disability forms told us that she was paralysed down one side and was virtually unable to walk. And the income support forms told us that she had no income, she had no capital, and she had no properties. It also showed that she was single and apparently living in London.
Milligan's vast back catalogue of benefit claims reaches back decades. If the whistleblower's claims are true, the loss to the public purse could be devastating.
And the first place that they looked was the bank statements. From those bank statements, they could see that there was income coming in from the rental of properties, and that she was paying mortgages, which suggested that she owned properties somewhere.
If evidence confirms she is indeed a property owner, it means she lied about her finances.
So the investigators moved from there to look at land registry documents. Investigators examined the land registry and found that Maribel Milligan was actually the owner of 3 houses. The alarm bell started ringing.
Far from the penniless woman depicted on her claim forms, Milligan's actually a property magnate. And her letting empire's not the only thing she's been hiding.
When we looked at Maribel Milligan's claim forms, they told us that she was single, but actually when we checked records, we found that she was married, and we actually had her marriage certificate.
It appears the whistleblower was bang on the money when it comes to Milligan's financial circumstances. Investigators calculate that she's helped herself to a massive £90,000 of support she was never entitled to. But it's only a fraction of what Milligan's received over the years in disability claims. What else is truth or a lie? Ben digs deep into the archives.
Here we have a copy of Maribel Milligan's first disability living allowance claim form. This was in 1994. This is where she tells the government for the first time that she cannot move her left arm or her left leg. Got another form here from a DLA claim. And if I turn to page 7 here, we can see in this section, Maribel Milligan is telling us about help she needs moving indoors, and she's telling us that she needs help to get in and out of her chair.
Maribel's claiming 4 different disability payments, including significant sums from her local council in London.
There was one benefit, primarily based on where she was living, and that was the direct payment benefit. She claimed that from the London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham. Those payments were to ensure that she had live-in carers working with her 24/7. This is a fund that aims to allow those with severe disablement to have carers in their own homes, looking after them.
But when investigators try to check the validity of this expensive round-the-clock care, they make a shocking discovery.
Investigators found that she was no longer living there. In fact, she was living in the northeast in Durham, so she was not eligible for those direct payments.
Yet another lie laid bare. Milligan's married, earning income from properties, and now claiming payments from a council 270 miles away from her home.
When you could see that, you really feel that this is a fraudster who has no boundaries, so her greed has no limits. She's quite willing to claim from a London local authority when she's actually living in the northeast.
Later, investigators put Milligan under surveillance and cannot believe what they discover.
This is killer evidence.
Finchley, Staffordshire, Town Council clerk Hilary Goodread has growing concerns about her assistant. Rebecca Mason has worked for the council for over a decade.
She'd been the constant over quite a few years and was trusted, completely and utterly trusted.
But Hilary believes Rebecca to be living far beyond her means.
So I did, on one day, ask her and say, what is it with all of this? You know, how on earth can you afford all the horses?
Hilary's sneaking suspicions are about to escalate even further.
Fairly early on in 2018, she was due to have gone to a training session, and I was due to go to the same training session a few days later. And when I arrived for my session, the trainer said, "Oh, it's a shame your assistant town clerk didn't come to the training session on Tuesday." And I said, "What do you mean she didn't come?" She came back and told me what a great course it had been. So I picked up the phone to Becky, and she said down the phone, she said, "I was there. They must be mistaken." And I did say to her then, "Don't lie to me. You know, I thought we were friends. I thought we had a better relationship than that." And she said, I'm not lying to you. I did go to the training session, but she was lying. The training session was a little village hall in the middle of nowhere with only about 20 people turn up. It wasn't a massive event where she would be lost in the crowds. And that's when alarm bells started to ring for me.
As their friendship sours, Hilary's misgivings grow. Her colleagues' spending is out of control.
As the year went on, things just really didn't sit right. So she came in one weekend very proud of the fact that she'd bought a horse box. She posted on Facebook pictures of a massive horse box that could fit, I don't know, 3-4 horses, that had a kitchen in it, had sleeping arrangements in it. And you couldn't help but think, where was the money coming from for this?
But then out of the blue, Rebecca takes a leave of absence, and Hilary is left to take on her assistant clerk's day-to-day responsibilities.
I had to take over her job as well as my own job, and do all the financial arrangements for the council.
Rebecca had always been responsible for overseeing the town council's finances. But with her assistant away, Hilary takes on the job and almost straight away notices something amiss.
It was clear that there were serious discrepancies in the payments being taken out of our bank account. There were a number of payments going out to mainly 2 organisations, which we genuinely pay, but we always pay them by cheque. And what I noticed was that there were a number of payments going out to these 2 organisations with different names written next to them. So it would be ADT, who we pay for our alarms and security, not a problem at all. But then it would be ADT Electrical or ADT Gas. In the first instance, you think, oh, there's been a genuine mistake. I will ring up the 2 organisations and I will get copies of all the invoices.
The companies send in their legitimate invoices, but there's no paperwork to match these suspect payments.
We then look at, well, what bank account is it going into? Is somebody hacking into our bank account from outside of the town council? Because it couldn't possibly be happening from inside the town council, we thought. So we look at the sort code and we look at the account number and we see that it's all the same account.
Someone, somewhere, is using this mystery account to bleed the council dry.
I went off to our bank, and our bank said the onus was on us to prove that we weren't genuinely authorising those payments. So I then spoke to the police, and it was the police that were able to access the bank records and find out who all this money was being paid into. And the owner of that bank account was Rebecca Mason. I will never, ever forget that day that we found that out. And the phone call came in from the police, And they said, yeah, it is all Rebecca Mason. I just felt sick to my stomach.
Out of sheer greed, Rebecca has pocketed the public's money. But just how much she's pinched is still unclear.
We had to trawl through a lot of paper information that was on Becky's desk. So all the past accounts, the annual returns that we send in to the external auditor all needed to be reviewed, see where she had made false records, and all of that took time. It took probably about 9 months.
Hillary's continued detective work uncovers just how shameless this brass-necked official's behaviour has been.
Going through the transactions that we found when she was taking the money out of the account, and from the works diaries, you can see whether or not she was off sick on that day, if she was at a public function that day, what she was doing. So, for instance, I know for a fact that on the day she took out £9,765 in one transaction, she was actually sitting on a beach in Turkey, Facebooking and, saying what a lovely time she was having on the beach, and yet she'd taken out the best part of £10,000. How she spent the money, the investigator identified that it was £17,000 on cars and travel, £20,000 on clothes, £20,000 on dining out, £133,000 on household items. It is unbelievable. This is just using the public money as a private bank account without any care, without any consideration, and without any thought.
Mason has helped herself to an eye-watering £220,000 of public funds.
I just sick to my stomach, absolutely sick to my stomach that anybody could do that, not only to me, but to the council, to the members of the public that pay their council tax.
As a direct result of this callous clerk, the council has had to shelve vital regeneration projects intended to improve the lives of local people, including plans to rebuild 2 children's playgrounds and restore the town's much-loved theatre. In May 2019, Rebecca pleads guilty to the fraud, and a month later, she's sentenced at Stafford Crown Court to 4 years in prison.
Whether she had remorse or not, I have no idea. She'd shown no remorse as she sat next to me in the office taking £20,000 out for a horse box. She showed no remorse as she stood next to the local MP and switching on the Christmas lights, having just taken out just under £1,000. I can only assume that the tears that were in her eyes were more as for what she was losing rather than remorse for the actions that she had done.
The local nursery school is a vital community resource, providing childcare and education to the neighbourhood's tiniest residents, much of it paid for from the public purse. When a selfish nursery volunteer thinks stealing much-needed funds will be child's play, the fraud squad soon teach her a lesson.
The task falls to Detective Sergeant Mark Cannoner of Kent Police.
For us, it was of fundamental importance that we got our evidence correct and that we brought her to justice for her crimes.
Bapchild, Kent, a peaceful village home to just over 1,000 people. At the tiny local nursery school, run by a dedicated team, a new chair has just taken over.
The first thing that person did was start checking the books.
And one particular cost in the records catches her eye.
First thing that really rang alarm bells, which was a Christmas party had been booked at the preschool. A Christmas party which had an invoice for a magician and various other costs implicated with it.
So far, so innocent. But the new chair is put out.
She had a daughter that used to go to that preschool, and she questioned why her daughter hadn't been invited. Now, she did some research, spoke to some people, and it transpired the Christmas party didn't exist. It never happened. So that was the first issue that they identified was potentially something not quite right here.
The party was just an illusion, but the money that paid for it was real enough. Is someone using smoke and mirrors to steal from the budget? The nursery teams sound the alarm with Kent County Council, who provide a large portion of the preschool's funding.
So KCC diligently went over every invoice, every payment, and what they identified was a series of frauds. Fraudulent invoices, fake letters, and fake emails.
These suspicious documents all link back to one person, Kerry Goldsmith. For nearly a decade, Kerry was a trusted volunteer treasurer at the nursery, responsible for overseeing all money matters. But just 4 months before suspicions are aroused, she resigns.
Because she was so trusted, she would actually convince her colleagues to sign en masse blank cheques, convincing them that, in fact, she could make the whole process a lot more effective and efficient by getting payrolls out a lot quicker. The actual fact was she was greasing the wheels of her own fraud.
With the rabbit out of the hat, it looks like this well-liked volunteer has been seriously fiddling the books, and a substantial amount of the nursery's vital funds appear to be missing. Time to involve the police.
So this case first came to Kent Police in September 2019, after Kent County Council approached us to say that a volunteer, Kerry Goldsmith, had been systematically defrauding the nursery for a period of time.
Mark and his experienced team are quick to get to work and start wading through Kerry's phony accounts.
Now, part of that process is quite painstaking. It involves us looking at every invoice, every receipt, every email, so that we can paint a picture through a time.
It takes the fraud squad months to sort through and separate the legitimate invoices and letters from the stack of counterfeits Kerry has meticulously forged.
Here we have what was perceived to be the first suspicious invoice, the magician, for the alleged perfect party package at Christmas. This was back in 2017. And as I look here, £160 for 2 hours of magic, balloons and games. I mean, this is unbelievable. She's obviously done her research, Kerry. She's looked on the magician's website, all the information she needed, and from there she doctored a fraudulent invoice to the value of £180. There were many, many invoices. Such examples were for some building work where supposedly a local company did some renovation work at the preschool. Well, we know that wasn't the case after undertaking inquiries, yet the invoice showed a bill for a large amount of money. And in fact, the reality was no building work had taken place, simply an invoice had been created to allow Kerry to then write out the same amount on a cheque paid directly into her bank account.
This is a carefully planned and deliberate fraud, going to elaborate lengths to create ways of stealing more and more money. As well as fake invoices, Kerry's also mocked up official letters.
This is from Kent County Council, from their planning department. This is where Kerry has supposedly created an opportunity to get £1,155 for herself on the premise of continued requirement for planning consent. So, looking at the letter, signed off with a very generic signature. Just little telltale signs. The phone number's slightly wrong, the email is slightly different font to the rest of it, and the actual Kent County Council looks a little bit grainy in comparison to the font of the rest of it.
Kerry has had 10 years as trusted treasurer to perfect her tricks.
Lo and behold, a few days later, there's a cheque for £1,155 made payable to Kerry Goldsmith. So it's blatant, yet she's trying to create that audit trail behind what she's done.
To confirm just how many of these documents have been conjured up, the police contact all the businesses Kerry has supposedly received invoices from.
We go to that individual and say, look, was this you? Was this your letter? Was this your invoice? And for every one of them, it wasn't a surprise that no, of course it wasn't genuine. And a large majority of the people we spoke to were absolutely shocked and, in a sense, frustrated that they too had been implicated in this investigation and defrauded. So they gladly gave us a statement, bearing in mind we're dealing with a preschool and someone who voluntarily was placed in a position of authority. They wanted to make sure that justice was done.
The nursery's money may have disappeared in a puff of smoke, but the police now know where it went. Kerry's private bank accounts, which have been scrutinised as part of the police investigation.
The statements showed over a long period of time cheques going in from the preschool and payments going out for general lifestyle. Now, this was fundamentally essential evidence to prove that the cheques that had been written from the preschool were landing in her account. Cheques which she'd written with her bank account details. It was damning evidence, and evidence we needed to prove the offence.
The police suspect that when it comes to spending the loot, Kerry's found yet another cunning trick to play.
So this is a receipt for 1, 2, 3, countless numbers of gift cards that have been ordered allegedly for goodie bags.
Kerry tried to pass these gift cards off as genuine presents for the nursery workers. But the value of the vouchers bought way exceeds any perks received by the staff.
Whilst we were never able to prove per se that those gift cards were spent by Kerry, it's fair to assume that these were her everyday treats, clothing, furniture, you name it. So this was her way of maybe covering her tracks by getting gift cards, but clearly she wasn't clever enough because it soon became apparent that we could link these to her.
The 11-month rigorous investigation reveals that, while posing as a selfless volunteer, this shameless fraudster has been stealing from the nursery for 7 long years.
Kerry wrote out in excess of 95 cheques. That's a huge amount, yet she was happy that she could cover her tracks for such a long period of time. She was making a lot of money out of it, and she clearly felt she was getting away with it.
Add up all 95 cheques, and it's a staggering amount of money.
In total, over the 7 years, Kerry had transferred over £37,000 into her personal bank account.
Public money that should have been spent on making sure young children get the best possible start in life.
Now, that money could have been used for some really worthy causes. General building maintenance, things for the kids, training courses, you name it. But instead, that money went into the hands of Kerry Goldsmith.
One of the most shocking parts of this crime is that this supposed do-gooder got away with her deceit for over 7 years, fooling countless members of her community in the process.
She managed to defraud so many people along the way, including people she worked with, people who saw her as a trusted member of the team. They were shocked, absolutely shocked, that someone for such a period of time could have this cover.
With the evidence stacked against her, the police invite Kerry down to the station.
Various questions were put to Kerry about her frauds, which we'd identified, but throughout the interviews, she was silent. No remorse, no comment throughout. Really frustrating, because that obviously was her time to give her account, her side of the story, and maybe explain exactly why she'd done it.
But the tight-lipped interview doesn't halt the investigation. The huge amount of evidence gathered is enough to charge her.
After the first hearing in court, it must have been blatantly obvious to Kerry that the evidence against her was overwhelming. She essentially was pushed into a corner, and she did the right thing and pleaded guilty.
It's curtains for this treacherous treasurer. Kerry is handed a 2-year jail sentence, suspended for 2 years.
This sort of crime, if gone uninvestigated, would set a precedence. She was in a position of authority, and obviously she was responsible for her actions. So it was really important that we identified the fraud and secured a conviction. A really good feeling knowing that after all the painstaking work, the result came in time. Because ultimately, we come to work to make a difference.
Despite the devastating blow to its finances, the preschool lives on and has secured its future by merging with the local primary school. hiding her property empire, faking her marital status, and falsifying her income forms. Maribel Milligan has spun a web of lies to claim £90,000 in benefits. But that's just the tip of the iceberg. Prosecutor Ben Reed is now homing in on her vast claims for severe disability.
Maribel Milligan had claimed not only disability living allowance, but she'd also claimed severe disability living allowance. And on top of that, she'd claimed payments for carers to help her in her home.
Ben's got all the evidence he needs to prosecute Maribel for her bogus income claims. But his hunch is telling him that her deceit runs deeper. And if she is faking her severe disability, the amount she's received over the years is mind-blowing.
The disability fraud in this case was worth £450,000.
£450,000 added to the £90,000 in income-related benefits means potentially the conwoman swindled over £540,000. Enough to give 70 people help with the extra costs of being disabled for a whole year.
If these allegations prove to be true, then Maribel Milligan had over £500,000 of money that was supposed to go to some of our most needy people in society. So the impact of being able to prove the disability fraud on this case was massive.
If Ben's suspicions are correct, he's got his work cut out to prove she's accountable for a £500,000 fraud.
So we tried to build a case on the disability fraud, and our first step was to surveil Maribel Milligan, to watch her and see what she was doing. Investigators needed proof to see what her true capability was. So they started surveillance, watched her moving about.
By keeping a watchful eye on her every move, could this be the breakthrough needed to prove she's lying?
That surveillance only showed us that she was sat in a wheelchair, being pushed around by a partner. When we reviewed that together, the investigator and the prosecutor, it was not strong enough to build a case. We needed more evidence if we were going to take that part of the case to court.
The team have hit a brick wall.
I knew that we needed to find material that showed she was lying about her disability. And my advice was very quickly, go and arrest Maribel Milligan and search her home and see what you find.
And what they discover is a treasure trove.
The investigators were really shocked by what they found. They found that her home had no adaptations for someone who was disabled. They found evidence of a lavish lifestyle. For example, they found that the floors were made out of marble and that the steps each had their own lighting.
All that disability allowance has been funding her luxury living. But there was an even more shocking secret hiding in the attic.
And when they got to the top floor of that house, they found that Maribel Milligan had created her own massage business with all the equipment to boot.
Maribel's certainly been massaging the truth. But her massage business and her rental income from her various UK properties aren't the only assets she's been building.
When the investigators searched Maribel Milligan's address, they found property records. So here we have one of the documents that was seized when written in Spanish. Initially, the investigators did not know for sure what they were, but they were translated into English, and they proved to be property ownership records from Venezuela that showed that Maribel Milligan owned 2 flats in Venezuela. The story painted by the claim forms in this case was of a woman who had no property and no income. But the reality is that she had 2 flats in Venezuela, 3 houses in England. She had rental income. She was trying to establish her own business as a masseuse.
It's Maribel's phone, though, that proves to be an evidence goldmine.
Here we have the photographs that were taken. They show her undertaking activities that are simply not compatible with her claim to disability living allowance. For example, in this first photograph here, we've got a picture of her swimming in the sea. She doesn't appear to be supported. We then got a series of photographs that show Maribel Milligan working as a masseuse. She's using that left arm in contradiction to what she told us in her claim form. She told us she was paralyzed in her left arm and her left leg. And then the final photograph in this series was a picture of her stood in front of the Eiffel Tower in Paris with her partner. She got no support, no wheelchair, so once again, does not fit with her claims to benefit.
But it's when they examined the mobile phone's video files that the true extent of this audacious fraud is finally brought to life.
The first clip shows her dancing. You can quite clearly see her moving that left arm around. In contradiction with her claim form, she said her left arm was paralyzed. There's no limited mobility there. Let's skip forward to the next clip. She's at an event. She's asked to dance. She's out of that chair quickly and smoothly, and now she's dancing with her partner. She's moving freely. This is not a lady who's virtually unable to walk. This is not someone who's severely disabled. You know, here's a lady who is asking the government to support her in her severe disablement. She's asking that we pay for her care at home. It's outrageous, it's disgusting. This is visual evidence of high impact. A jury's going to love this material. You know, this strikes right at the core issues, which is what is the ability of Maribel Milligan. This is killer evidence.
It's the nail in the coffin, and Maribel's charged. But even faced with the mountain of evidence in court, she still keeps up the facade.
She pleaded not guilty to all the offences, much to our surprise, given the strength of the evidence against us, and we had a trial which lasted for 5 days. And she was found guilty on all counts by the jury, and she was given 3 years in prison.
For Ben, it's a satisfying end to a complex investigation.
The best bit about being a prosecutor is that you get to fight for the good. And what I always tell my little boy is, I'm taking the bad guys and making sure they get justice.
Join us again when our investigators weed out even more shameless fraudsters.
It was the largest attempted fraud that I had seen in my career.
And help protect our public purse.
I knew at this moment that we would win the case.